So this happened last year when I was in the amusement park with my kids. My kids are young, and it was our first outing in a long time. I'm usually packed with work, and even Sundays aren't always free. My kids, too, like spending time with their friends on the weekends. We haven't had a family outing in a long time, so we decided to go out next Saturday. I had taken a leave for 3 days, and my kids, too, were constantly insisting on me to take them out, so in the end, I surrendered. We got ready and drove to the park. Thankfully, it wasn't too crowded. I asked each of them which rides they preferred. My eldest was 10 at the time. She picked up all the relatively safer rides. My other two twins, who were 7, weren't ready to go with her. They wanted to check out the scary rides. Now, I was the only adult with these 3. I really should have brought someone else, I thought. My eldest kid, let's call her May, turned to me and told me that she would be okay by herself. She had her phone and she had picked safe rides, so there was no reason why I had to worry. I was anxious because I knew she was shy and got scared pretty easily. There was no way I was going to let her be alone. However, the twins were crying and absolutely against the idea of going with her. You know how it is. I scolded them, but May assured me that if anything happened, she would contact me in an instant. Plus, there were a lot of families around, so she swore she would be okay. I called my sister, who lived nearby, and asked her if she could come. We waited for her for the next 15 minutes. She told me that she was really bored and glad that I reached out to her. I asked her to go on the rides with May since she too liked safer rides. I gave May some money for the rides and snacks and told her to enjoy herself. We split up and decided to meet each other in an hour. I took the twins to all the rides and they had a hell of a time. I kept texting my eldest after every ride just to check up on her. She didn't reply to the last text, but I thought it must be because she was tired of texting me the same thing every time. As the hour was up, I told the twins that it was time when we came together again and ate something. I tried calling May, but there was no answer. I called her again, but no one picked up. Then I called my sister, and she picked up instantly. She told me that she couldn't find May. They both went to the washroom, but May got out first, and since then, she tried calling her a lot. I walked to the side of the park that she was in and tried to find her. I couldn't find her at all. I was anxious and my palms were sweating. The twins complained that they were tired of running. I told my sister to take the twins with her and to seek help from the announcement area and the staff. Meanwhile, I ran to the washroom. I called again, and finally, someone picked up the phone. I could hear a lady's voice screaming in a loud voice. I could hear the sound of water splashing. I ran to the water roller coaster ride, praying that I would find her there. As soon as I reached, I found May standing with her head down and a woman in her late 30s bossing her around. I walked up to May and she immediately hugged me. She was crying and holding me too tightly. I asked her what had happened and why she wasn't picking up her call, and the woman slapped my arm and pulled May towards her. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I asked her. She had a little boy with her who must have been around 12. "Who are you to say anything? Get out of my business," she yelled and pushed me a little. I pulled May back to me and told her to stay behind me. Then I told the woman that I was her parent and there was no way in the world she was going to harass my daughter and make her cry. The lady laughed. "Ha, your daughter, you say? She's not your daughter, so shut up. Fool somebody else. Go and mind your own business and give her back to me or else I will report you to the police." I wanted to punch her face. I told her that she was my daughter, and I didn't need her or anyone else's permission to take May away from that sorry excuse of a woman. "She's not your daughter. Give her back to me. She spilled a drink on my new son's clothes. It's not going to come off, and I will have to buy a new shirt, you know? I saw she has money, so I'm asking her to pay for all the rides and to carry our stuff in order to pay us back for the damages. She's come here with a lady in a hoodie who was her mother. That woman came here dressed so poorly. I don't think they'll pay for my son's shirt, so I'm taking what I deserve." I was furious and perplexed. How could someone treat a mere child like that? And how dare she treat my child in such a bad manner? I told her again that May was my daughter, and after hearing what she had to say, I was absolutely not paying her anything. Rather, I was going to drag her to the police station myself. The lady smiled and told me that I wouldn't be able to do anything. I didn't understand what she meant by that. She was smirking and texting someone on her phone. Meanwhile, I called the police and gave them a brief summary on the phone. A few minutes later, they arrived and I explained to them every single thing that had happened. It was completely clear who was in the wrong. Not for Karen, though. She was in her own dreamland. Talking to her child and asking if he was well, she paid no heed to what was happening as if it had nothing to do with her. She behaved as if she was just a bystander waiting for some drama to unfold. The cops asked a few questions, and she was as ignorant as they come. It was the same fabrication on her own version of the story. She was completely choosing to ignore the hurt she had brought to others. The cops told her that they were going to kick her out, and she told them that before they did that, she wanted to make a call. The cops told her that the calls weren't going to work, but she started yelling and screaming that it was one call. Finally, they surrender. Then the lady rolled her eyes and dialed a number. She asked somebody to come. It was evident that that person didn't want to come. How could I tell? Because she kept begging again and again. After a few minutes, she ended the call and asked the cops to wait. She was smiling like a maniac. I sent my sister our location and told her to come soon. She told me that she was feeding the twins because they were hungry and that she'd be there soon. We just stood there waiting for someone. I asked May if she was doing okay. Around 10 minutes later, a cop arrived. I knew his face very well. We met each other quite frequently. He gave me a light nod and asked the woman what had happened. She started spewing nonsensical lies. As he was walking towards May and I, trying to ask our version of the story, Karen declared that the chief of police was her brother-in-law. Now it all made perfect sense. Why she was smirking constantly like an idiot, and why she asked us to wait. I told the cop every single thing and asked May if she was comfortable enough to share details. She told him what had happened. Karen kept repeatedly chanting to not believe any of us. The man absolutely looked tired of her and kept looking at me apologetically. After she was done with her ranting, he told her to apologize to my child and me. Why? Why would you make me apologize to these people? She ruined my son's shirt. She should be held accountable. Otherwise, she will never learn. And I have to buy a new shirt for him, okay? I didn't know if her parents could even pay for the shirt, so I just used her money and told her to carry a few things. It's the least she could do after causing us problems. And she had a lot more money than a child should carry. I have to drive and go all the way to the shop, and you don't think my grievances should be taken into consideration too? I deserve that, she barked. I told the police that she had confessed herself and they should immediately take action. Upon hearing this, the lady yelled at me and told me that I shouldn't care because May wasn't even my daughter. She said that her actual mother isn't even worried because she doesn't see her anywhere. Just then, my sister and the twins arrived. As soon as Karen saw my sister, she gulped and took a step back. Then I told Karen that the woman she assumed to be my daughter's mother is actually my sister, and that May was my eldest daughter. She must have anticipated that by the way she reacted to my declaration. So what? I'm right about everything. Can't you see that my brother-in-law's here? He will protect me through everything, the lady said. The chief of police finally spoke and told Karen that he wouldn't protect her from anything at all, especially when she was out there harassing and stealing from a little kid. Then he turned to me and apologized again and again. Why are you apologizing? It's not like they can do anything. They must have money, so it doesn't hurt to take a little from them, she argued. The chief of police looked at her and said, well, you should apologize because you're wrong. Also, this person is the mayor of our city. Don't you know that? Karen's eyes popped out. She nervously looked at me. Then she pleaded with her brother to let her go and instantly handed the money she took from the child. She didn't even apologize, not once. Not to May or me. I asked May what she wanted, and she told me that she just wanted to keep enjoying her rides with her family. I knew there wouldn't be a lot of consequences, and I wasn't going to waste my time dealing with this pathetic human being rather than being with my kids. So I asked the cops to kick her out of the amusement park. Her son started crying. She tightly grabbed his hand and left without uttering another word. This was about 10 years ago. I was hiking in the mountains of New Hampshire with my wife. It was typical mountain weather during the summer, meaning it was cold and snowing on the summits. We had been on the summit of Mount Madison and we were descending towards the hut near the summit. Quick background. In the New Hampshire mountains, there is a network of huts where hikers can stay. The huts are staffed by college students and they provide you with a bed in a large bunk room and hot meals. And when I mean large bunk rooms, they're like 50 beds in the room. These huts are intended for people as a safe place to stay when they're doing long multi-day hikes, but they can also be accessed from easier locations as a quick fun getaway. Anyway, it was starting to get dark and we were slightly unprepared for the cold weather, it being July and all, and we started to get a little hypothermic. My wife was struggling to climb down, and we made the decision that I should hurry on ahead to the hut and alert the staff that my wife might need some assistance. This wasn't the smartest idea, but it was starting to get dark. There was a storm coming, and we were worried that if I didn't alert someone, we might get stuck. I make it down to the hut and check in. We had reservations at the hut. Reservations were 100% required, no exceptions. So they knew I was coming. They welcomed me and directed me to the bunk room. I told them about my wife who was still out there and they said that they would keep an eye out, and if she didn't come within the next 30 minutes, they would send out a team. While everyone had to have reservations to stay the night, there were no assigned bunks. You just picked one that was free. And since it was early still, 6 p.m. or so, all that meant was that you tossed your stuff on a bunk to claim it. I went into the bunk room and couldn't find any open bunks. Now, I am slightly hypothermic and not thinking straight, so I drop my pack near the door and walk out into the dining room where I pour myself a mug of hot chocolate. I am slowly warming up when my wife walks in, maybe 15 minutes later. She was in bad shape though, quite hypothermic and not at all able to think right. The staff gets her blankets, convince her to get her damp clothes off, and pump her full of hot chocolate and gave her a bowl of hot chicken broth they had going, specifically for this purpose. While sitting there warming up, this woman sitting on the bench next to her says something like, "Yo, save some of that soup for the rest of us. You aren't the only one here, you know." We look at her like she has 10 heads. She had this gaggle of kids with her, and it was clear she got there earlier in the day via one of the direct routes from the valley. Otherwise, she wouldn't be looking as put together as the people that had been hiking for a couple days to get there. I explained to Karen that my wife is hypothermic and needs to get warm. Karen kinda like snuffs at me, but goes to deal with the kids. Now that my wife is safe, I decided to try to figure out the bunk situation again. I go to the bunk room looking for any 2 bunks to claim for the night, but again, there are none to be found. I asked the hut staff what the deal was, and they said that although they were booked full for the night, they don't overbook, so there should be open bunks. And at least 10 people have yet to check in, so there really should be no reason to not find a bunk. After asking around about who has what bunk, the staff comes to Karen and asks her. She says, "Well, my kids weren't sure which bunk they wanted to sleep in, so they claimed a few different ones, as if this would explain it." I'm sitting there next to her hearing this, and I'm flabbergasted. The nerve of this woman. I come to learn that she had been here since noon and was just hanging out with her kids, irritating the staff all day. The staff guy asks her to have her kids pick on a bunk because others need a place to sleep. Karen refuses and says that the kids can't possibly know where they want to sleep until it's actually bedtime. At this point, I am pissed off because I just want to lay down for a bit before dinner is served. My wife is still feeling awful and wants to lay down. And here's Karen with her bratty kids refusing to give up space they aren't using. So I went to the bunk room and found a few bunks that, now that I know what is going on, are claimed with stuffed animals. Every normal hiker claims a bunk by putting a pack down on it. I rightly figured out that the stuffed animals and such were owned by the bratty kids. So I just took those and yeeted them into the dining room. Then I grabbed a bunk for my wife and one more for myself and settled down to rest. About 5 minutes later, Karen comes in screaming at me for touching her kids' stuff, and how dare I presume to decide where her kids were going to sleep, and blah, 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 blah. I just said, "Shut up, lady." This was before the term Karen became a thing. Otherwise, I would have said that, and closed my eyes. Karen loses it and gets the staff. The staff look at her, look at the yeeted pile of stuffed animals and shrug. They said, "You can't claim multiple beds." But Karen wasn't having any of that. She sent her kids in to reclaim the multiple beds. But this was also when more hikers were coming in for the night. Also, somewhat hypothermic and starting to claim bunks. The kids lost their collective crap because they wanted to claim all the bunks and justified it by saying they were there first because they arrived at noon. It took a while, but the staff finally convinced Karen that she needed to have her kids pick a single bunk. It's impossible to kick someone out of a place like this since it's now somewhat dark. There is a storm, and the fastest way out of here is a 3-hour hike down a steep trail. So everyone was stuck with Karen and Brood. Oh, but the story doesn't end there. It turns out that Karen and her 4 kids only made reservations for 2 of them. Apparently, Karen decided on her own that kids under 10 don't need reservations. There's literally nothing on anything that says this. She just decided that. So, when hikers with actual reservations came in, Karen got discovered that she was trying to basically steal accommodation for the night. The staff made her sleep in the dining room on the floor with one other kid. She had to choose who needed to sleep on the floor. There were not enough bunks for everyone since actual paying customers got the bunks. That was so satisfying to watch.